Hello and a very warm welcome to a brand new edition of World Panorama with me, Frank Pereira, on Rajiv Television. Over the next half an hour, we'll bring you a roundup of all the significant events that have taken place around the world this week. But first, a look at the headlines. Several European Union countries re-establish border controls as migrants flood in. Still no definite quota policy for division of refugees between members. Malcolm Turnbull becomes Australia's 5th Prime Minister in 5 years. Incumbent Tony Abbott voted out in an internal party poll amid a fraying economy and crumbling popularity. After months of debate, Nepal's Constituent Assembly endorses new constitution, its first since the republic abolished its 239-year-old monarchy in 2008. Opposition parties boycott the landmark vote. Grand ceremony in Parliament on Sunday to adopt the landmark document. At least 7 active wildfires rage in drought-dried forests of California state in western US. Hundreds of homes and buildings burnt down. Property worth millions destroyed. Authorities say they are the fiercest fires in decades. Well, our top focus on World Panorama this week. 2 decades of frontier-free travel across Europe under the Schengen system showed signs of unraveling this week, as several countries re-established border controls in the face of an unprecedented migrant influx. This even as a high-level meeting of EU nations failed to chalk out a definite quota policy for division of migrants between the members. For the migrants, the plight and nomadic uncertainty only intensifies.
Closing of the Hungary border, a domino effect felt in many European nations after Germany reimposed controls at its borders on Monday, signaling a sense that the migrant crisis has got the better of the Schengen open border agreement. Now these European nations want migrants to be registered first at entry points into Europe. Hungary went so far as to declare an emergency in 2 southeastern counties.
We call this as a temporary fence. Obviously, it was rather a must decision than a nice decision. We don't like building fences, but up until we are able to reinstate or reinstall border control at the green borders, the natural borders of the country, we had no other choice.
On Hungary's borders with Serbia, the army has been deployed. Border controls are also in place on the Germany-Austria and Slovakia-Austria borders. For the migrants, the situation adds to miseries. It became a race against time, rushing in before being forcibly kept out. Many are left stranded, some have been arrested. Protests have broken out too, with hopes of an end to the perilous journey dashed, at least for now.
يعني احنا نريد اليوم انه يفتحون الحدود، لا بالعكس ما يسكروها، صح صار ضغط، صح صار يعني زحمه هنا، بس لا احنا نأمل من عندهم انه يعالجون هذا الوضع.
But hopes of details on laying down quotas for migrants at an EU meet held this week remain unfulfilled. At stake is the future of some 120,000 asylum seekers, on top of quotas for 40,000 distributed on a voluntary basis so far. Ex-communist Central European states still reject mandatory quotas.
La charge de l'accueil des réfugiés ne peut pas reposer simplement sur 5 pays de l'Union européenne qui accueillent à eux seuls 75% des demandeurs d'asile et des réfugiés. Et si l'Europe veut être à la hauteur...
Over 7,000 migrants entered Hungary from Syria the day before fencing was put up, the highest on any day so far. EU Border Cooperation Agency Frontex has noted 520,000 irregular border crossings this year, an unprecedented situation. For the migrants who haven't yet made it into Western Europe, it's an uphill climb yet. Refugee camps where they exist are overcrowded at best. The UNHCR has asked Europe and the world to halt ill treatment, detention and other measures against migrants.
I implore decision makers in Africa, the Americas, Asia, and the Pacific, as well as Europe, to take swift action to establish effective and principled migration governance. States have a sovereign right to secure their borders and to determine conditions of entry and stay in their territories. But they also have an obligation to respect international human rights law, refugee law, and humanitarian law.
Despite it all, they continue to pour in over the Mediterranean in life-threatening conditions, desperate to push into Europe. 2 boats capsized in these waters this week, killing 39 people. But lessons aren't learnt because they believe the journey will be worth it in the end. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
Well, joining me for a chat this week to talk about the crisis is former Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs, Mr. Rajiv Sikri. Ambassador, thank you for joining me on the program.
A pleasure.
You know, on a daily basis, we've seen the migrant crisis in Europe deteriorating. You know, the borders were left open for a brief while last week, but now all the borders have been closed. The migrants are being shunted from one country to another. Where is this heading?
I think it's a very serious situation. And the European countries are scrambling to find a solution, a viable solution. They try one thing, then another, and it doesn't work. Initially, the migrants were coming from Italy and to Italy from Tunisia, from Libya. But now they're coming from the Balkans, they're from Africa, from Afghanistan, Kosovo, Syria. And different routes are there. If one route is closed, they're coming via another route, depending on, which is the easier one. There are racketeers and organized gangs also at work. Some people are genuinely persecuted. Others are seeing in this an opportunity to get to Europe. And then even when they reach the borders of Europe, they all want to go to the more prosperous countries, or countries which, in their estimation, have more liberal policies, better housing facilities, social security, and so forth. But the trouble is that the borders of Europe, both in the south and in the east, are countries which are not so well equipped to handle it, which themselves are not as prosperous as the countries in northern and western Europe. And therefore, it puts a lot of pressure on them, both economic, social, and political. I don't know where this will all end. I understand that the Europeans are going to have a summit next week to consider this matter. But
what's going to come out of this summit? Because they've had several such summits and, there has been no concrete step taken. They've discussed a quota system, but that quota system, there are several countries that do not want to take in that many people.
Absolutely.
So it's heading nowhere. It's basically going nowhere, these summits.
Well, one thing is quite clear, that some kind of border restrictions on a semi-permanent basis, at least, are likely to remain. And this would undermine the Schengen Agreement, which has been touted rightly as one of the big achievements of the European Union. Now, the free movement of people, that provision in the European Union is undermined, then the whole European project comes into question. And as countries grapple with this, the nationalist feelings are growing. There are political forces in these countries that are very anti-immigrant in their approach. Others have prejudice against the migrants because of their ethnicity or religion. There have been some attacks on the migrants. And it has created quite a serious problem for the European countries. There's no unity among the European countries.
We're going to see the, sudden coming to the fore of some of these right-wing political parties within each of these countries.
This has already happened. This has already happened. And, Europe as a project was something that was welcomed by everyone, so long as there was peace, there was prosperity, growing economies. But when the difficult times come, and now Europe has expanded from 6 to 12 to 27 or 28, whatever it is now, then the problems become greater. and the European structure just cannot handle it. They haven't found a solution to it. You know, it's a bit like India. Europe is as diverse as India is. And we also have problems within our border, within India. Migrants from one part of India go to another. But this is resolved, you know, by the laws of supply and demand. Occasionally you have problems in some parts where the local political forces say we don't want outsiders and so forth. We have also experienced the Bangladesh migrants who came, refugees who came in 1971. And this is a problem which is there all over the world. You saw the Myanmar refugees who were cast adrift in the Bay of Bengal, and there are migrants who try to make their way from Indonesia to Australia. Now, historically, there has been free migration of people. After all, the whole of North America and South America was peopled by migrants. Australia, New Zealand, it's all migrants. So a lot of these problems were exported elsewhere, and the pressure walls were released.
Indeed.
Now, in the 20th and 21st century, the barriers to free migration have come in. And this is actually, historically speaking, an anomaly, because capitalism says you have free movement of capital and but not labor.
Right. Right.
And you see that how in India also you have a lot of Indians who want to make their way elsewhere around the world, and they also often resort to dubious methods. But you know, these are small numbers. However, when there is a problem which is on Europe's doorstep, then it becomes a problem. Indeed. And Europe cannot escape it.
All right, Ambassador, we'll have to leave it at that. Thank you so much for putting things into perspective for us on the program.
There's one more point I wanted to make.
Quickly.
That is, the European Union is facing a moral hazard. On the one hand, they're very strong on human rights, refugees and so forth. On the other hand, now they're confronted with this. So there is this thing also which I think they'll have to tackle.
Yes, they will have to tackle that as well. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for joining us on the program and putting things into perspective for us. On that note, of course, we'll slip into a short break. But still to come, Burkina Faso pushed back into military rule. A coup against the leadership there threatens the future of democratic elections. That and much more still to come. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha Television. Well, Australia got its 5th Prime Minister in 5 years. This week, Malcolm Turnbull has been sworn in after the ruling Liberal Party voted out Tony Abbott following waning popularity of the government and Abbott in particular. A series of perceived policy missteps, destabilising and fighting, and leaks are held responsible for Abbott's ouster. All eyes are now on Turnbull, with the huge expectations resting on him to bring things back on track.
I, Malcolm Turnbull, do swear that I will well and truly serve the people of Australia in the office of Prime Minister.
Australia's newest man of the moment, Malcolm Turnbull, swearing in as Prime Minister, marks the 4th change of power in the country since elections in 2007. He takes charge of a bitterly divided government. His predecessor, now former Prime Minister Tony Abbott, had led the Liberal Party to power in the 2013 election. Abbott goes after his party colleagues voted 44 to 54 to replace him. Turnbull's elevation only reinforces a culture of disposable leaders as the new norm in Australian politics, going back the last 8 years. The changeover draws mixed public reaction.
Sense of hope, a sense of renewal. I'm not even a Liberal voter, but I just think perhaps we're heading in the right direction.
Disappointed, to say the least. As a public, we voted Tony Abbott as the Prime Minister. If Malcolm Turnbull had a chance, he's done his dash. He had his chance long ago and he missed his chance. So why is it that he gets in now? Does he really have the country's interest at heart, or is it a personal interest? Equally so, I'm disappointed with Julie Bishop. We've divided loyalties.
60-year-old millionaire Malcolm Turnbull is a journalist, lawyer and merchant banker. He'd slammed Abbott for being unable to provide the economic leadership Australia needed. On his return now, Turnbull carries the weight of massive expectation of lifting public opinion, reforming a flagging economy and steering Australia on a more moderate course on issues ranging from climate change to gay marriage. There's also the challenge of holding together his administration and its right wing.
It will be a thoroughly liberal government committed to freedom, the individual and the market. It will be focused on ensuring that in the years ahead, as the world becomes more and more competitive and greater opportunities arise, we are able to take advantage of that. The Australia of the future has to be a nation that is agile, that is innovative, that is creative.
For an intensely developed nation into its 25th consecutive year of growth, Australia's politics has been a bumpy ride of late. The country has had a merry-go-round of prime ministers, especially post-2007, when John Howard's 11-year tenure ended. Labour Party's Kevin Rudd was elected Prime Minister with a strong mandate in 2007. He was deposed 3 years into his term by his deputy, Julia Gillard. Gillard was deposed again by Rudd ahead of elections in 2013. Abbott had won the 2013 poll with a good margin. Now he's been deposed by Malcolm Turnbull. Turnbull takes the reins as Australia's economy slows and transitions away from a mining boom that provides it 55% of its export wealth. As tax revenue shrinks, a hostile Senate has blocked spending cuts. Political instability due to changing leaders threatens business investment. Prime Minister Turnbull's immediate challenge will be elections due next year, a gauge of whether he's been able to live up to promises. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
Meanwhile, in a historic move, Nepal's Constituent Assembly endorsed its new constitution this week, making it the first constitution the republic has passed since abolishing its 239-year-old monarchy in 2008. The constitution bill was passed by a two-thirds majority, capping a 65-year-old dream of having a constitution written by the people's representatives. A total of 507 votes were cast in favour of the constitution bill, while 25 votes were cast against the bill. 3 of the 4 major political parties, Nepali Congress, CPN-UML and UCPN Maoists, supported the bill, while Madhesh-based parties boycotted the constitution drafting process. President Ram Baran Yadav is to promulgate the constitution at a ceremony in Parliament on September 20th. Let's take a look now at some news-making events that made headlines around the world this week in our Globe Watch.
General Gilbert Diandre seized power in Burkina Faso in a military coup on Thursday. This comes just a month before elections that were meant to restore democracy in the East African town. At least 10 people are reported killed in protest in the capital. A day before this, the Presidential Guard arrested interim President Michael Kafando, Prime Minister Zida and 2 ministers. President Kafando had been at the helm since November last year after a brief military takeover and intense protest to end military rule. At least 32 people were killed and 68 others wounded when 3 bombs went off in mainly Shiite neighborhoods in central Baghdad on Thursday. 2 suicide bomb attacks in the central commercial district of Bab al-Sharji killed at least 8 people and wounded 18 others. A third blast in the nearby Bab al-Muaddam district killed 4 people. A hospital source said the bombs had wounded a total of 68 people. The Islamic State claimed responsibility, saying it can still launch attacks in the heart of the capital despite attempts to dislodge the group. Gunmen belonging to the Pakistani Taliban launched an assault on a military base on the outskirts of Peshawar city in Pakistan early Friday, storming a mosque inside the sprawling compound and killing 16 worshippers during prayers. The attack triggered a gun battle with Pakistani troops at the base, during which an officer and 2 guards were also killed. Pakistani forces said they killed 13 of the attackers, but it was unclear how many were involved in the assault. The attack comes as a major blow for Pakistan's military, which stepped up operations against the militants following a horrific Taliban attack at a Peshawar school in December last year. 1 million people were evacuated in Chile after a powerful 8.3 magnitude earthquake hit the country's central region, triggering a tsunami alert. The tremors lasted almost 3 minutes and there have been several aftershocks. At least 10 people were reported dead when the quake hit on Thursday evening, with the toll expected to rise further. In the coastal town of Coquimbo, waves 4.7 meters high hit the shore. A tsunami alert was issued for the entire Chilean coast but has since been lifted. Fresh images from NASA's New Horizons spacecraft have captured a low-lying haze clinging to the surface of Pluto. The pictures also offer stunning views of the dwarf planet's rugged mountains and its sweeping plains. New Horizons acquired a mass of observations as it whipped past Pluto on 14 July at a distance of 12,500 kilometers. Scientists say the haze provides further evidence for the equivalent on Pluto of Earth's water cycle, but involving exotic types of ice.
Moving on now, massive wildfires raging through thousands of acres of dry forest area in California and the US are devouring everything in their wake. The California state governor declared a state of emergency. Reports say hundreds of buildings, vehicles and industry have been destroyed and scores of towns evacuated as raging infernos defy intensive firefighting efforts. The forest fires caused by fierce heat and drought are said to be the worst the region has seen in nearly 3 decades.
A land of raging hellfires, almost a scene out of mythology, except this nightmare is for real. The Valley Fire, as this latest one is called, has roared through several towns and villages of North California from early this week, devouring hundreds of homes and buildings, even entire towns, forcing immediate emergency evacuations, consuming nearly 70,000 acres of dry forest cover and counting.
This is crazy that all this was just here in a matter of an hour, a few hours, everything was burnt.
Hundreds of local residents, even entire communities, have been moved to shelters set up away from forested areas. Many have lost all their possessions, mulling on how to start afresh after the nightmare is over, waiting for news of control over the inferno. Fortunate only that they were able to get out alive with their children and pets.
We were trying to get out, we were trying to hook up our trailer, and all of a sudden, 2 houses up, I see this big wall of pink and red and gray, and so we just dropped everything and left. I didn't even get my purse, nothing. We just drove away and left our trailer and everything.
From 1,000 firefighters initially, nearly 4,000 of them have been deployed to fight just the Valley wildfire. 2 days after it started, reports said just 5% had been contained. 4 firefighters were hospitalized with second-degree burns. 1 civilian was burnt alive. A large number of animals and livestock have been lost. A senior official said it's the worst he has seen in his 28 years of service, calling for special control measures.
Right now we're trying to eliminate the fuels to make a good buffer zone to create so when the winds change, if the fire bumps up to a big black area, we'll be able to stop the fire.
As many as 12 such wildfires rage in California and other West Coast states. In East California, the Butt Fire has been raging since last week. Further south, the Rough Fire has claimed nearly 130,000 acres since it began in July. Only 29% of the Rough Fire has been contained. Intense drought in these parts over the past several years has meant near-complete absence of moisture. Ideal fuel for the fires. In the hot summer, a spark is all it takes to blow up into an uncontrollable inferno.
These fires are burning in all directions. They're fuel-driven fires. The plume of smoke is creating its own weather, and so they're very unpredictable. They're throwing spot fires out ahead of themselves over a half mile in all directions.
The aftermath is always one of complete devastation. Vehicles, homes, property destroyed beyond recognition, often even melted because of the intense heat. Wildfires are a phenomenon the US as well as parts of Australia see almost every other year. Efforts to end the menace continue to fall short. Bureau Report, Rajiv TV.
Well, let's shift focus now and bring you up to speed with some big events from sporting arenas around the world this week in our segment Sports Action. FIFA Secretary General Jerome Valcke has been put on leave and released from his duties till further notice. A FIFA statement said it had been made aware of a series of allegations involving the Secretary General. The Frenchman, who has held his role at FIFA since 2007, said he denied the allegations. Football's world governing body, FIFA, has been engulfed by claims of widespread corruption since May, when Swiss police raided a hotel in Zurich and arrested 7 of its top executives. Barcelona's Lionel Messi became the youngest player to reach 100 UEFA Champions League games following the Catalans' 1-1 draw against Roma. The superstar played in a milestone 100th game in the European competition on Wednesday night, becoming the youngest player at 28 years old to reach the century. Only 33 players have reached triple digits in the Champions League, with Messi joining the likes of former teammates Carles Puyol, Xavi Hernandez and Victor Valdez. The NFL team Dallas Cowboys have overtaken La Liga giants Real Madrid as the world's most valuable sports team. Business magazine Forbes valued the American football club Cowboys at $4 billion, ahead of Madrid at $3.26 billion. New England Patriots and MLB's New York Yankees are tied for third, ahead of Real's fierce rivals Barcelona, who are valued at $3.16 billion. Andy Murray has pledged to give £50 to children's charity UNICEF every time he hits an ace for the rest of the season in a bid to help the refugee crisis. Murray said that he was moved to act by coverage of people travelling to claim asylum in Europe. Murray's sponsor Standard Life, along with Lawn Tennis Association and ATP, will each match his donation. Murray has been one of UNICEF's celebrity supporters since 2014 and starred in a series of comedy skit videos in June to raise money for the charity. Veteran Test cricket left-hander Shivnarayan Chandrapal has been honoured with the Icon Award by the Indo-Caribbean Alliance. In a ceremony held in New York recently, the 41-year-old was given the New York City-based organization's highest award and was one of 4 persons honoured in a 5-hour-long ceremony. Chandrapal said that he was delighted to have been chosen for the honour. Chandrapal has been one of the most prolific run scorers in West Indies cricket, amassing 11,867 runs from 164 tests at an average of 51. And finally, of course, let's take you to the greatest exhibition of Soviet spacecraft ever seen outside Russia. The London Science Museum's Cosmonauts' Birth of the Space Age showcases some rare artifacts that mark the beginnings of mankind's travel into space. I'm going to leave you with these visuals. See you again next time.